We have Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Cuba, Her Excellency Ismara Vargas. We have our comrades Zhao Fei, who is Minister Counselor from the Embassy of China. And we have our comrade from the Embassy of the Laos People's Republic. We would like to thank him for coming. And we might have some visitors coming a bit late. But without further ado, because I know you will all be very, very excited to listen to our speakers, I'm going to ask Joseph Scala to speak first. Thank you. Would you like to go to the podium?
Okay.
Yes?
Maybe.
Thank you.
Comrades, my first question is, which continent is not present here? Austria, okay. Austria. Next time, please, complete it. I must tell you, I always feel extremely happy whenever I enter the party like that of yours, which is not spoiled by the parliamentary careerism and similar, let's say, pathologies. It's visible from the beginning. You like each other. You are happy to come, to meet. You are comrades. Comrades with capital S. C, sorry. And it's recharging the batteries of people like myself very much. Thanks a lot for this. I'm neither the Pope of Rome nor the Archbishop of Canterbury, so don't worry. So there will not be any dictatorship. I mean, I'd like rather to provoke a debate. I believe that that's the purpose of our meeting. I'm really curious what you will contribute to the topic which we celebrate today. And I do believe that all of us know the history of the Great October Socialist Revolution. And I cannot dare now to repeat all the, let's say, well-known data. Rather, I'd like to speak about certain elements which are a matter of a big ideological battle today, that's A. And secondly, on the issues which, to my opinion, represent an inspiration for us in totally different conditions of today. As you know, the Great October Revolution is now evaluated by many our opponents as not only a terrorist attack and all of this, but as a premature, let's say, step. That as if Bolsheviks and their allies did not have a right to go that way. Let me remind you, a famous German sociologist, a liberal one, Max Weber. You remember, many of you perhaps, this name. The man was traveling through Russia at the beginning of the 20th century, and he even wrote several programs of the Russian party called Cadets, Constitutional Democrats. And he wrote several extremely interesting texts about pre-revolutionary Russia. And the key item in his, let's say, considerations was that capitalism is coming to Russia too late. Too late. This was Max Weber's, let's say, opinion. What did it mean? As we know from Lenin, the capitalism grew to the imperial stage, which divided its body into two pieces. One was the metropolis, which were seeking for a big rent from the periphery. And Russia was that periphery in extremely specific climatic, agricultural, and other conditions. So if Russia would become, let's say, Kuwait, as was the plan, the tragedy of Russian people will be horrible. Secondly, how did they dare to go for power? What was the situation in 1917? Russia was in war for the interests and goals which had nothing in common with genuine Russian interests. It was a it was a big army losing many lives in the interests of Britain, France, and the United States of America. And none of the Russian political subjects was capable to quit the war even after the February Revolution, when Tsar was removed and so on. And now I will tell you one new finding of Russian genuine historians, which are not obedient to any Gorbachev and Khrushchev and Yeltsin and such, let's say, specific persons. They discovered that a part of, a very important, hidden part of, let's say, the way towards the Great October Revolution was a hidden cooperation of the several leaders of the Bolshevik Party with the most enlightened Russian colonels and generals, around 30 people in the general staff of the Russian army, under Tsar already, and I would go more far, and especially in the, let's say, secret service of the general staff, came to the understanding that Russia would totally collapse and would be divided by imperialist predators from abroad in case it would continue that way. And there is only one political subject in Russia which would guarantee leaving the war still in time and preserving integrity, unity of, let's say, Russian state. And there were hidden negotiations. And you know who was representing the Bolshevik Party? Namely, Joseph Stalin in these negotiations. The man who is demonized as idiot. I don't know. You know what stupidities are, let's say, spread on his address. He had political wisdom and courage to go even into such, let's say, interesting, let's say, step, which was very helpful for the revolution. And we can say, to a certain extent, that also the Great October Socialist Revolution had an element very similar to the revolution in Portugal in 1974, which, as you know, was arranged by the Communist Party, led by legendary Álvaro Cunhal, and the group of patriotic, let's say, enlightened officers. This story is still mixed with another element, and unfortunately, the second, let's say, attack on the, let's say, proper picture of the Great October Revolution is raised from the side of Russian historians, which claim, and it's also funny, and I'm having disputes with some of them, that Russian Bolshevik Party, in fact, went the opposite way than what Marx and Engels, let's say, prepared. And as if Marx and Engels were insisting the revolution can be only, let's say, in the most advanced economically countries, and Lenin and his group, let's say, stepped, let's say, back to all of this and decided to go the other way and so on. Unfortunately, these people, they don't know, for instance, one important fact. When Marx was living here in London in the 70s, he spent here half of his life, as you know, was so interested in the developments of Russia that he started to learn Russian. And he was reading, why? He wanted to read statistical abstracts and let's say, similar serious sources of how Russia is developing. And he was addressed by Russian, let's say, alternative intellectuals, and they were asking him whether Russia can pass capitalism, in fact, based on this, what is called in Russian obchina, you know, this very specific collective organization in the village, in the agricultural sphere, and not to let's say be tortured by all the let's say repercussions of capitalist development. And Marx wrote them that yes, it is possible, provided the revolution is led by a, let's say, mature proletarian revolutionary party, which is capable to have a necessary influence also in the countryside. And exactly this happened. And what is extremely interesting, and for us it's a big inspiration, how Lenin was developing his view on these issues. At the end of the 19th century, he wrote a famous book, The Development of Capitalism in Russia. And there he was claiming, yes, that we should do our best for that capitalism comes, develops in Russia, let's say, shows all his contradictions, and only afterwards we can move further. But during the first Russian Revolution, years 1905 up to 1907, he got a new, let's say, experience, and extremely was capable to convert it into the change of strategy and tactics of Bolshevik party. And exactly this, let's say, brought the victory, the capability to address the majority of working people which were in the countryside. Most of them were, let's say, no education. They were, how you call it in English? Help me. Illiterate, yes. I'm sorry, time to time losing certain words. And I need souffleur. So that was another big inspiration for us. Why? Because today the chances to move towards socialism would, let's say, be available time to time in totally different conditions than it was in the past. And we should be capable to creatively develop that, let's say, that capital with small c, which we got from Marx, Engels, Lenin, and other, let's say, clever people. Another stupid distortion of everything consists in that as if Stalin diverted from the politics of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. Another stupidity. He developed the same path, and he, let's say, creatively further developed it in this situation when, as you know, Russian Bolsheviks went for the October Revolution deeply convinced that just after there will be a continuation in Germany and other European countries. And it was quite a legitimate expectation. Unfortunately, in none of these countries there was a party comparable to Russian Bolshevik party. With all my sympathies to Rosa Luxemburg, for instance, which was a great woman, big theoretician in economic sciences and so on. Have you read their speech in the first Congress of the Communist Party of Germany around Christmas in 1918? It's difficult to say it, but I must say it. There was no strategy, no tactics. It was simply a speech about the now workers will take power. The workers themselves cannot take power, I mean, if they don't have proper organization, program, and so on. And unfortunately, Rosa Luxemburg and her colleague Liebknecht were murdered in a, let's say, very dirty and cruel way. Now, there are two big contradictions, comrades, and you know it, let me name them very openly. The conditions for a move towards socialism are more mature than ever before. Capitalism is in a stage when really nothing is solved as it should be, let's say from the position of the majority. But unfortunately, the subjective factor of that move beyond the horizon of capitalism are weaker than ever before. That's a horrible contradiction. And secondly, now people who are proletarians, objectively, represent a bigger part of the society than ever before. Even IT guys, I mean, are also proletarians, many of them, and so on. But a portion of those objective proletarians which regard themselves proletarians and seek for some understanding of their social, if not class even, interests is smaller than ever before. These two horrible, let's say, contradictions seek for their solution. It will not be easy, but we should think about it very intensively. And there, I think the key point is to find those key antagonisms which can get the ground for our political offensive, not only defending this and that, but going ahead, even against the big power, let's say, power play which is played by the capital and its state and transnational institutions and so on. And I believe that one of them is represented by further development of what Lenin in an excellent way depicted in his famous book, Imperialism as the highest, let's say, stage of capitalism. You remember, he speaks there or writes there, by the way, he read 148 books in order to, and 320 or how many articles in order to write this book. Could you imagine? It's something unbelievable. And he speaks there not only about periphery and metropolis. He speaks there about the acceleration of the uneven development of capitalism, which was very dramatic, and about the fact that capitalism, especially in the metropolis, is getting parasitic and decaying. I remember when we were, let's say, attending the lessons of Marxism-Leninism in the university, that if some of the teachers used this formulation, that many of my, let's say, fellows were, what, parasitic, decaying? What sort of stupidity that they have very nice shops there and I don't know what, and cars. So it was difficult to explain that there's nice shops and cars are also in Africa for somebody, for some part of the society only. But what happened with this finding? Export of capital was a typical, let's say, trend already there that time. But now, the capital was so much exported, not only capital, but technologies, production, so much exported towards the cheapest labor, so that in the United States, Detroit, which was a, let's say, shop window of the American dream, almost each worker in Detroit had a house for kids. His wife was at home and he was capable to feed it and all of this. Everybody was happy. Now you know what is called Detroitization of America. This is a total rubbish there. And this is happening almost in each field. So even the production moved also due to these policies out of the imperialist metropolis. And where is the economic, let's say, background or ground or power, or how to call it? It's in the countries which are called by Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov the countries of world majority or global majority. They are out. They are in the, as they call it, in the east and in the south. They are not as it was there, as it was in the past. By the way, the story of the military conflict in Ukraine is a very interesting, let's say, proof of all of this. If Russia can produce 3 times more ammunition for artillery than the whole collective West, I think it shows what I'm speaking about. And for us, there is a big topic. how to react on these new crossroads. We know that in Russia there is a capitalist system, a system which is not very friendly to quite many, let's say, people, socialists still. I know that Putin, let's say, got it from the past in a horrible, is somehow improving it and so on. It cannot be done immediately and so on, but there is still oligarchs there which are very rich, and it's disgusting to see certain things, I mean, like this. Why to hide it? It's a capitalist society. But still, objectively, the state policies of Russia, not speaking about China, for instance, are creating a new balance of power. And we should benefit out of it, not in an opportunist way. We should catch this opportunity and work with it. For all of us, the more BRICS would move ahead, economically, geopolitically, militarily, if you wish, though it's not a military organization, but there are other organizations like Shanghai Organization of Cooperation and so on. The more, let's say, they proceed, and the more they withstand the pressure of the US and their satellites, the bigger the space for left-wing progressive forces globally, including Britain and Czech Republic and so on. So we should find our proper approach towards this new big chance, very big chance. What are the other opportunities? I think one of them consists in this unprecedented level of parasitism, which is visible in all the Western countries, European, Euro-American civilization, including, for instance, the Czech Republic. We have 84 billionaires, I mean in Czech crowns, which own almost 20% of all the assets. 84 billionaires. These people stole what we had before, collective investments. They did not create a single anything, I mean. I'm always asking, do these people, did they bring any innovation? What the classics of bourgeois economy are claiming, that profit is, let's say, a remedy for the risk, that you come and you develop something new and you are risking, and you may win or you may lose. They could not lose because they were not doing anything like this. I mean, they're only stealing, I mean. And this element is converting into visible antagonism even for the people who are not left-wing oriented, who inherited all these illusions about November Revolution, velvet, finally freedom, and I don't know what. And now they see, even if they are not workers, proletarians, if they have small companies, and so they are permanently beaten by this parasitic layer of the society. Moreover, obviously by foreign capital. And in the countries like the Czech Republic, it's very apparent. Believe me or not, we were economically very advanced country before the coup in '89. We were playing an active sovereign role in what I'm calling the Champions League of global industry. Champions League. I cannot now spend so much of your time by enumerating in which fields we were among, let's say, the top, let's say, players. We had absolute, let's say, capability of the country to feed itself, except of oranges and bananas, I don't know, lemons, which you can hardly, let's say, plant. You can, but it costs money, and you should use electricity and so on. Now we have the lowest, let's say, portion of our consumption created at home. And we are tortured by chains like Tesco from here and like Albert. And they are playing with us really a colonial game. And they buy something for 10 units and they sell it for 60, and nobody can, let's say, do anything with this so far. I think that an anti-parasitic, let's say, front is another big chance. And I think we should prepare it much more analytically and conceptually. For countries like the Czech Republic, not so much perhaps in Britain, it's the big chance which was depicted already by Lenin in his thesis on national and colonial and national item or issue or question, which he presented to, I think, to the second Congress of Comintern, where he has the following, let's say, line. The more the country is under the pressure, dictate of foreign capital, the more the communists should address their policies to all those who are suffering from it, including small capital, including, let's say, national capital and so on. They should get the speakers of all these people. They should get the navigators of joint struggle against. They should create also the organizational forms for it and so on. And I'm a member of a party which I'm proud for, let's say, certain stages of our history. You may remember it. At the end of the Second World War, our party created a bloc representing a unity of the majority of the country, and was a vanguard inside this bloc, and led it up to, step by step, up to the crisis in February 1948, when these our opponents made a mistake and, let's say, left the government. They were 12 and 13 let's say, did not leave it. No, and our comrades went to the president of the country and said, okay, we'll replace these 12 and we'll have a new government. And that's it. So we passed the border of capitalism without a single bullet. You know, without a single bullet. I'm speaking too long, and I will maybe finish in several minutes. I think that there is even a new, from the theoretical point of view, a new element which deserves a big attention from our side. Traditionally, we had our goals divided into two stages. The first one was called general democratic. I mean, the fight inside capitalist society. And then socialist, revolutionary, let's say, beyond the borders of capitalism. Basically, it's a norm for today as well. But I believe that, and let's think about it, I think it's a very productive, let's say, line of thinking. The fact that all the problems which capitalism is not capable to solve would be solved beyond his borders. Oh, melodrama. It's a constant true. It was the true, and it is the true, it will be the true. But the degeneration of capitalism came to the level when it's, let's say, getting the very fact that the solution lies beyond the border of capitalism is getting an acute appeal on us today. We cannot, there is not a revolutionary situation that tomorrow we can pass, but we can, especially in countries like the Czech Republic, I think in Britain as well, in certain, let's say, certain conditions, we can insist on and raise, let's say, proposals, demands and so on, which are moving to the borders of capitalism. This is the only way to somehow solve, to minimize the big, let's say, risks and another, let's say, the repercussions of the degeneration of capitalism. You are reading, I believe, also the books of, what is his name in World Economic Forum? No. help me again. The boss of once a year they meet all these guys. Klaus Schwab, bravo, thanks a lot. In my age I have a right time to time, not react quickly. The RAM in my head is slower time to time. If you read also the books of Klaus Schwab, you must, let's say, see the dosage of perversion which these people are capable to run, to push. If I say it in a little bit simplifying way, in the period when the Western countries were led by, I don't know, Roosevelt, Churchill even, Willy Brandt, Charles de Gaulle and so on, these were bourgeois politicians. We may have many very sharp, let's say, critical remarks to them, but to this or that extent, they were somehow striving for development of their countries. There was some development, there was a bourgeois development, but there was a development. For what are striving people like Ursula von der or Scholz or Macron, how they call him in Russia instead of Macron, and people like this? That their goal is destruction. It's not a development, it's destruction. There's a continuous destruction of all the pillars of modern civilization. And it has deep, let's say, roots in the level to which the crisis of capital reproduction reached. Very shortly saying, in the past, capitalism was not, let's say, any friendly guide towards normal people, but the reproduction of capital was to a big extent depending on capability to sell the production, the goods and services on the market. And basically, who is the market? Basically, it's those people who are, let's say, creating surplus value, workers and the others. Because the parasitic consumption of the tops, it cannot solve the problem. Today, this is over. They lost, during this globalization stage, they lost the only way how they could escape from the crisis, which was, let's say, getting new markets. There are no new markets today. Over. They can, I don't wish it, but if they smash Cuba, which unfortunately once, I believe it will not happen. For their reproduction of capital, it will not be nothing. Cuba is not such a big country. If they smash People's Republic of Korea, okay, similar story. So what is happening? More and more capital is reproducing itself in a totally speculative way, not creating a single new value, zero value, doing it at the risk of ourselves, not at his risk, doing it, let's say, on our debt, because all the debts we are creating, they are nationalizing, but doing it even by their back to all the human needs. This is for the first time in the history. And this provides us, first of all, a big panorama which should be explained to the people to show to which extent parasitism is a principle, is a pillar of this society. And at the same time, it provides us the chance to create much broader alliances, to get a speaker of much, let's say, more influential structures, provided we are a genuine vanguard. We are a genuine vanguard. And that's the key problem of today's communist movement, that those parties who are still in the parliaments and so on, unfortunately, they are not vanguards. They are not vanguards. They play on the playground of the opposite side. They are enjoying what was called by Engels and the others trade unionism only, and combining it with what they were also calling parliamentary cretinism. I think it's a very precise formulation. And so we have two big tasks. To get a navigator of much broader alliances, by addressing their specific interests. Because the key antagonism with the global capital is growing, is affecting yet broader and broader strata. And in this respect, we should learn very much from our big teachers from the past. And secondly, this makes sense only we are a vanguard which does not create an illusion that it's enough to change some ministers and several paragraphs, it will be okay. That's the problem of most of the parties which are claiming we are radical left and so on. They are not. You have a big advantage. Your theoretical foundations are genuinely vanguard. And I'm proud to be a friend with Harpal Brar for many years and with the whole dynasty of Brars. Harpal was, the dynasty is coming also to Prague for many years. Harpal was coming since the 90s. He was a very young man and always participating in the conferences which were organized by regional units only of the party. This shows, by the way, also something. The leadership never wanted, something, people like Harpal. So we are doing it as an initiative on the lower stage. And then Rajit also was coming, and Jyoti was coming. And I must tell you that our comrades, and not only communists, which were attending such meetings, were witnesses of that you are really a genuine vanguard. It was clear, moving to the substance of the issue, capable to apply the class approach and to not to, let's say, be a victim of fashionable versions, stories, narratives as they call it and so on. To oppose all of this. I'm proud to have such friends. And I have one proposal, comrades. You are a small party and due to objective reasons, to get a big, let's say, subject on the British political scene, once it will happen, but not perhaps so quickly, due to many objective conditions. You are not giving up. Let's say, this fact itself is very, let's say, promising. And I propose to you a cooperation in the field in which you are very strong. I'm a director now of the Institute of the Czech Left, which is an institute created by the Communist Party. I was moved a little bit aside not to disturb people. At the same time, okay, I am theoretically somehow educated and so on. I think that we should, across Europe, create a new network of subjects which are genuinely Marxist, if you wish, Leninist. Though in Czech Republic, if you say Leninist, you can go to the prison. So we should speak about Marx. I think you do bow your heads like this, all of you. So I regard it as an approval. I will come back and I will present it to my colleagues and comrades in the institute. I must tell you, this institute, there is a core Marxist, let's say, part, but I succeeded to bring there dozens of intellectuals which are enlightened. They are not Marxists, but they are, let's say, more and more against the neoliberal policies of the government, against the attempts to push Czech Republic to the war with Russia and maybe even China, some idiots claiming. There is the second man in the order of constitutional representatives who is capable to say the following sentence. After we how is it in English?
Crush, destroy.
Destroy. After we win over Russia, we go on China. Would you imagine this man who has 6,000 soldiers and he wants to to defeat Russia than China. But they shout these stupidities, and not a small part of the society thinks that, aha, this is true. So, okay, I'm spending too much of their time. I believe that we will have an interactive debate after. That it will not be, as I said, I'm not the Archbishop of Canterbury. Thanks a lot for your...
Thank you so much, Comrade Joseph Scala, a living example of not giving up. An amazing speech. I think I talk on behalf of everyone that brought to life the lessons of the October Revolution for today, for those who want to play a vanguard role. You said it very clearly. We need to have tactics, we need to have strategy, yes. We need to have education as to what is imperialism, and you mentioned Lenin. And it's not a coincidence that he is demonized, right? Because he talked. He made it possible to understand the enemy, to diagnose, and to have a way to fight it. Exactly. And this is what is missing from a lot of parties today, the right diagnosis. So thank you for reminding us about always trying to find the right approach to show maturity in that sense and to create alliances. And we have, I would like, if I'm allowed, to tell our comrades and guests here that we have been honored with receiving a letter from the Embassy of the Russian Federation. Oh. So I think that ties quite interestingly and productively with what you just said. And of course, in the Russian political discourse, we know that the October Revolution is talked about as a foundational event for Russian sovereignty, right? And Vladimir Putin has acknowledged many times its influence for shaping Russia's modern identity. And we received wishes and congratulations on that day, the day of the October Revolution. And unfortunately, the ambassador, Andrei Kelin, could not be present, but he sent a letter, a message that I'm going to read. So, 7th of November, 2024. Dear friends, please accept my greetings on the occasion of the 107th anniversary of the 1917 October Revolution. The momentous events of 1917 make up a pivotal chapter in the history of humanity. The revolution has had a huge impact on the evolution of both Russia and the entire world. To a large extent, it shaped the global political, economic, and social landscape of the 20th and 21st centuries. Being itself a manifestation of profound and multifaceted processes in our country, it created formidable, deep-rooted political, intellectual, and cultural foundations for a massive ideological shift, which included, amongst its manifold features, the promotion of social and economic equality and the interests of the working class, as well as the fight against colonialism and its consequences. Today, when engaging in an in-depth and comprehensive reflection of the events of 1917, historians tend to express completely opposing judgments on the legacy of the revolution. However, I am convinced that turning to the lessons of a century ago is extremely important now that international relations are going through truly tectonic shifts, confidently leaning towards a more just, multipolar system based on the principles of indivisible security and equal opportunities for all nations and peoples. As you know, these are the principles that our country firmly upholds. Let me express my respect for your party and many of your common sense, thoughtful views on current political events. I wish you all the best. Sincerely, Andrei Kelin. So Lenin educated us in the spirit of internationalism, educated us to be able to recognize the enemy we fight, that we have the same enemy, and that's imperialism, and of course, to be able to recognize the primary contradiction and to see the world as divided in two camps, where one, the camp of a handful of imperialist oppressors, are the possessors of financial capital and exploit the majority of the population of the globe. And to be able to recognize at any time, as Marxist-Leninists, this camp of the oppressed and exploited, that is always worth our solidarity and our defense. And those countries that are standing up to oppression and colonialism. So thank you, Joseph, for reminding us all this tremendous power that was unleashed thanks to the planned economy. So now I think we are going to move to our next speaker, which is going to be the ambassador. Our comrade is Mara Vargas Walter from the Embassy of the Republic of Cuba. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dear comrades and friends, it's an honor to be here with you tonight to celebrate the great October Socialist Revolution. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the CPGB-ML for inviting us to commemorate this transformative moment, which continues to inspire all those fighting for justice and equality. The October Revolution was a monumental victory for the working class and oppressed peoples of the world. Led by Lenin, the Bolsheviks demonstrated that the new society, rooted in solidarity, equality, and collective progress, was not only possible, but essential. This achievement still resonates deeply with us in Cuba, where our own revolutionaries, led by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, and guided by the same ideals, fought for independence from US imperialism and built a socialist project that prioritized social justice and dignity for all. Today, and you are all aware of the situation in Cuba, as we face growing challenges, these values are more important than ever. Recent hurricanes Rafael and Oscar caused significant damage to our infrastructure, particularly to our already fragile energy sector. Our recovery efforts are hampered not only by the long-standing, cruel US blockade, but also by the unjust designation of Cuba as a so-called state sponsor of terrorism, a baseless label that restricts our economic potential, limits our access to essential resources, and ultimately affects the daily lives of the Cuban people, of every single Cuban family. But let me assure you, the Cuban people will continue to resist. Our resilience is greater than any external threat. We are a nation that has faced immense challenges before, and we have always reason to meet them with courage and unity. We will continue to evolve, innovate, and adapt our society to meet the needs of the Cuban people, and we will remain steadfast in our principles. Moreover, we will not allow these circumstances to diminish our commitment to internationalism and solidarity, even as we face our own difficulties, and they are huge. Cuba will continue to reach out to those in need, from sending doctors to crisis-hit regions to offering scholarships to Palestinian students. This commitment to solidarity is part of who we are, a value embedded in the revolutionary spirit we are celebrating today. Dear comrades, the principles of the October Revolution remind us that while we may face adversity, we are not alone. We are part of a global struggle for justice and peace, a struggle taken up by nations and progressive forces around the globe. In today's multipolar world, the Global South stands together for a future in which sovereignty and dignity are respected above all. The ideals that inspired the October Revolution continue to guide us as we build a better future by resisting US imperialism and extending solidarity to those who share our vision of a free, just, and dignified world. Thank you for your support and solidarity, and thank you for allowing us tonight to celebrate the lasting legacy of the revolutionary change. Long live the October Revolution.
Viva Cuba, because it never fails to inspire us with its vision that the working class can achieve independence and provides a model of continuous struggle for us. And we salute your resilience in the face of all these difficulties. Solidarity. So you very clearly demonstrated how the October Revolution ignited this flame for freedom in the oppressed nations, and showed how nations could free themselves from the yoke of imperialism, and that's what's taking us to our next distinguished guest, who is our Minister Zhao Fei from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China. Please welcome him. China that has demonstrated its commitment to socialist values, and that has demonstrated rapid transformation. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you. Dear comrades, friends, good evening. It is my great pleasure to attend the Great October Revolution anniversary celebration of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninism, and to meet friends, both old and new, here today. This year marks the 107th anniversary of the victory of the October Socialist Revolution. The October Revolution was the first successful proletarian revolution in human history and marked a monumental leap by transforming scientific socialism from an ideal into reality and from theory into practice. It opened up a new epoch in human history and inspired the world proletarian revolution to enter a magnificent new era. For China, then mired in deep crisis, the significance of the October Revolution was also epoch-making. With the salvos of Russia's October Revolution in 1917, Marxism-Leninism was brought to China, which gave rise to the Communist Party of China. Since then, the CPC has been adapting the basic tenets of Marxism to China's realities and its fine traditional culture, and following the socialist path. Thanks to arduous efforts, CPC has united the Chinese people as one in an endeavor to undertake great causes and make historic achievements. The Chinese nation has since achieved a historic leap from standing up to going rich to becoming strong. Comrades and friends, today, China is a nation of prosperity and strength. In 2023, China's GDP surpassed 126 trillion yuan, a 223-fold increase since the founding of the People's Republic. Solidifying its place as the world's second largest economy. In mere decades, we have completed an industrialization process that took developed countries centuries. Build a comprehensive, modern industrial system and become the world's largest manufacturer. With just over 7% of the world's arable land, we feed 20% of the global population, ensuring food security for the 1.4 billion Chinese people. Significant progress has also been made in Chinese modernization. We have established a modern national defense system tailored to China's unique needs, further bolstering our confidence in the country's development. Today, the Chinese people enjoy health and happiness. In 1949, the average life expectancy of the Chinese people was only 35 years, while in 2023, it rose to 78.6 years. Meanwhile, the national per capita disposable income reached nearly 40,000 yuan, an increase of 76 times in real terms since 1949. Since the launch of reform and opening up, we have lifted 770 million rural people out of poverty, winning the largest and most effective fight against poverty in human history, and creating the world's largest middle-income group with over 400 million people. We have built the world's most extensive healthcare, education, and social security systems, significantly enhancing the sense of security, fulfillment, and happiness among the Chinese people. Today, China's development is increasingly green. We are steadily advancing a green, low-carbon transition and have built the world's largest clean energy production and supply system. China's installed capacity for the renewable energy is twice that of all other countries and regions combined. We have become the world's largest contributor to forest resource growth and artificial afforestation, accounting for 1/4 of the global increase in afforestation area. Our exports of the trail, namely electric vehicles, lithium-ion batteries, and photovoltaic products have surpassed 1 trillion yuan, reaching over 200 countries and regions, and contributing new momentum to the global green development. This year, despite intensified external pressure and increasing internal challenges, China's development has continued to make stable progress. In the first 3 quarters of this year, China's GDP grew by 4.8% year-on-year, ranking among the top of the major economies. Our high-tech manufacturing grew by 9.1%, with rapid development in emerging industries and growing innovation-driven productivity. The added value of wholesale and retail sectors increased by 5.4% year-on-year, showcasing robust consumption growth potential. According to the latest forecast by the International Monetary Fund, China will remain the largest contributor to the global growth over the next 5 years. Comrades and friends, since the very day of its founding, the CPC has made seeking happiness for the Chinese people and rejuvenation for the Chinese nation its mission. And the CPC Central Committee, with General Secretary Xi Jinping as its core, is leading us towards this goal. Last July, the third plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee was convened, during which China's overall development objectives were set out. By 2035, we have finished building a high socialist market economy in all respects, further improve the system of socialism with Chinese characteristics, generally modernize the system and capacity for governance, and basically realized socialist modernization. All of this will lay a solid foundation for building China into a great modern socialist country in all respects by the middle of this century. Over 300 important reform measures were introduced to achieve this target. As these reforms take effect, China's social vitality and development momentum will be further unleashed, strengthening the institutional foundation for China's modernization. Comrades and friends, the CPC is also dedicated to human progress and world harmony. We strive to secure our development by safeguarding global peace, and in turn, use our development to better support world peace and progress. China has always been a builder of world peace. Following an independent foreign policy of peace, China has been building friendship and cooperation with all countries on the basis of mutual respect, non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality, and mutual benefit. Over the past 75 years, China has never initiated any war or conflict, and has never occupied an inch of other countries' territory. We have always worked for peace and dialogue, and the political settlement of international disputes. China has sent more troops to UN peacekeeping missions than any other permanent members of the Security Council. We are now the second biggest funding contributor to both the UN and its peacekeeping operations. China has always been a contributor to global development. General Secretary Xi Jinping advocated the building of a community with a shared future for mankind, and the implementation of the Belt and Road Initiative and the Global Development Initiative, offering the Chinese solution to global development issues. By the end of 2023, China has provided development assistance to more than 160 countries, partners with more than 150 countries under the BRI, with direct investment exceeding $300 billion in participating countries. In the meantime, China has been advancing GDI cooperation with over 100 nations and the UN. China has always been a defender of fairness and justice. China has always advocated that International rules must be made and upheld jointly by all countries based on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, rather than dictated by those with the strongest muscle or the loudest voice. China will continue to practice true multilateralism and work to make the international order and system more just and reasonable. Comrades and friends, the history of the international communist movement since the October Revolution has proved that when adapted to realities of various countries, Marxism-Leninism will be invincible. On the new journey, the CPC will continue to unswervingly adapt Marxism to the Chinese context and join like-minded friends worldwide in working tirelessly towards the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and towards the world peace and development. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Zhao Fei. We never tire to hear your amazing achievements, economic achievements, which of course safeguard your sovereignty. And we are very, very much, of course, in solidarity with China. And these are the achievements of planned economy and of the communists in power for us. And you're talking about prosperity and cooperation and assisting nations rather than exploiting them. Of course, these are the legacies also of the October Revolution, which is celebrated today. So thank you for bringing those to today's world. And I think it is now time to introduce our speaker, Jyoti Brara, the Vice Chair of Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninism.
Small panic there. I thought I'd lost my glasses. Comrades, it's wonderful to be here on this occasion. You know, I'm not going to list all of the amazing achievements of the October Revolution. We have done many meetings where we did a brilliant job of that, and there's lots of speeches. And I ask all of our viewers online and people here tonight who haven't heard all those wonderful speeches about October to go to our YouTube channel while it's still there, Proletarian TV. It's full of amazing tributes to the October Revolution and some really eloquent testimonies of exactly what was achieved in the Soviet Union as a result of October. But I think tonight we really want to focus on the legacy of October. You know, the October Revolution opened the era of socialism and national liberation. And that is the era in which we live today, no matter what the reverses, temporary reverses of history, because history never moves in a nice straight line, unfortunately. Some of my comrades say it moves in a spiral. I prefer to say, you know, if here's the line, it kind of goes up and down like that. The general trajectory is this way, but, you know, it's not a simple progress from one system to the next. We are in the era of socialism and national liberation, which was opened by the October Revolution. And with us, we have representatives of China. The Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese Revolution brought October into Asia. The Cuban Revolution, the Cuban Communist Party brought October to Latin America. These connect Marxism to the entire globe. It was the October Revolution gave new life to the anti-colonial movement, the national liberation movement, precisely because it based its analysis of imperialism on science, and that science spread with like wildfire across the globe after October, after the success of the Bolsheviks. Everybody wanted to know, what is this? In India, in China, in Latin America, all around the world, people who'd never heard of Marx said, what is this that's just happened? We need to know. In 1921, when the Chinese Communist Party had its founding congress, in Shanghai that famously moved to the Red Boat. There were, I think, you'll have to correct my numbers, I think there were 21 people there, and 2 of them were from the Soviet Union. The Soviet influence on the national liberation struggles of the world was immense. In India, when Bhagat Singh and his comrades were on trial for rebelling against the British, they sent greetings to the Comintern on Lenin's birthday because Bhagat Singh had been inspired by the October Revolution and the writings of Lenin. This was the period when communist parties all over the world were founded, even in Western Europe, where officially what they used to call social democratic and which after the October Revolution became communist parties had already existed. New parties had to be formed from the revolutionary wing of parties which had gone rotten and betrayed the working class during the great conflagration of the First World War. So this was the period following October in which our movement really took its birth and found its legs, thanks to the great feats and the great organization of Lenin and the Bolshevik Party. And the Soviet Union provided not only inspiration, not only a huge literature from which we could learn the tactics and theory, not only of understanding imperialism, but of organizing to fight and overcome imperialism, it also provided a practical base for the world revolution. And we must never forget that. One of the earliest supports that was offered to the world revolution was the foundation by the early Soviet Union of the, the University of the Toilers of the East. They straight away began to educate leaders of revolutionary movements from around the world in Marxism, in the practical work of organizing. They trained them militarily, sent them back with arms, with money, the ability to found and develop, anti-colonial movements in their country and to lead them on a more scientific footing and with connections always to the Soviet motherland, which was truly a motherland not just for the Soviet people, but for the workers and oppressed peoples of the world. And of course, we know the real high point of the achievements of this period of socialist construction that was unleashed by the revolution, by the Bolsheviks, reached its apotheosis in World War II, the smashing of the Nazi war machine, the phenomenal change in the balance of world forces that was brought about through that time. And it's that which really changed the nature of imperialism, or the presentation of imperialism, I should say, in the West. After World War II, European imperial powers were broken. In mainland Europe, totally broken. In Britain, really crumbling. And they needed to re-establish themselves. They needed 2 things. One was massive financial injections and support, political and economic and military support from the USA. And the other thing was they needed to buy off the revolutionary sentiments of their workers. And that is what they did temporarily. They created welfare states as a kind of pale imitation of what a real revolution would have brought the people, to convince the working class that there was a peaceful road to socialism, or that socialism in fact wasn't needed, that they could have a civilized life, civilized conditions, under conditions of continued capitalist exploitation. The great tragedy for our movement is that the communist movement in the West was at the same time bought off and neutralized. And this is why we have this situation that Comrade Joseph pointed out for us today, which is that while on the one hand, the boom that the imperialist system got from the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Eastern European People's Republics, that gave it a big shot in the arm, a big financial injection when it was in trouble at the end of the 80s, that boom has passed, and imperialism is more decaying and parasitic and in a deeper crisis than at any time before. All the objective conditions are there, the ripening of all the conditions and the absurdity and obscenity of the contradictions of the system are deeper and more obvious than at any time before, and yet the subjective force of a strong, united, theoretically equipped vanguard communist movement is missing, because where parties are big, they let go of their Marxism, and where Marxism exists, it's not connected with the masses. And this is really the job, the primary purpose of the movement at this time. It's the primary goal that faces us, is to rebuild this connection between Marxism and the masses. We've lived through a difficult time period, comrades, and there's no doubt about that. You know, Joseph Stalin predicted, sadly, foretold almost. He said, he gave an interview to a journalist, I think it was from America, and he said, what will happen if the Union of Soviets should fall? He said, the workers and the oppressed peoples of the world will be seized by the throat. Well, is that not precisely what we saw in the period following 1991? Were not the workers and oppressed peoples of the world seized by the throat? Have they not lived through the most horrendous times, not only in the Soviet Union, not only in the former Eastern European People's Republics, in all the remaining socialist countries? Wasn't the screw put down harder? Weren't people put under more and more pressure? And what about the workers in the imperialist countries? What happened to our wonderful peace dividend? Yes, there was a shot in the arm for the imperialists, but the deindustrialization and the attacks, not only on our jobs, but on our services and our infrastructure, accelerated. They didn't slow down. Despite the fact that the imperialists were making a whole load of money looting the rest of the world, they also felt confident to push down at home, because the opposition had been neutralized and demoralization was rife. There's a reason why there are so few members of my generation from the West active in the communist movement, and certainly who've been active since I have in the 1990s. Because when we were leaving school, communism was officially defeated. Our working class movement had also been defeated in the 1980s. We were taught the class struggle was over, and for the mass of people of my generation, they believed it. They were despondent and cynical, and they didn't have a leadership able and capable to inspire them with confidence in themselves as a class. They allowed themselves to become more and more fragmented, individualistic, isolated from one another, and steadily our sense of ourselves as a class has been systematically taken apart. Nevertheless, we remain a class, and we remain the power that has the potential to switch this situation completely. We see today in the world that there is a new upsurge in the anti-imperialist movement. Joseph talked to us about the flipping of dependency relations. You know, on the one hand, as imperialism has continued to exist for another 100 years, way past its, decaying sell-by date, it has become more and more and more parasitic, to the point where it's really, really hard to find a worker in the imperialist heartlands who produces new value. We're all of us, in some way or another, living as parasites, even the poorest amongst us. We have to recognize the nature of our economy. It's not a personal insult. It's a truth about how our economies have become. The export of capital has meant that rather than sections of our economy being totally parasitic, as was noted by Hobson in 1902, now the vast majority of our economy is non-productive and parasitic on the labour of the rest of the world. Well, okay, the capitalists, the financiers at the very, very top of the tree, are continue to loot the world through this mechanism. They're making hay. But for the majority of the people of Britain, this is an undignified, demoralising and increasingly impoverished way to live. More to the point, it's incredibly fragile. Incredibly fragile. Stop and think about this for a minute. we're still consuming products every day that somebody had to make. If they're all coming from abroad, the requirement for our life to continue as it is, even assuming stability and all other things, is that the whole of the rest of the world accepts its position as the manufacturer of the goods that we will consume. Every single country which is enslaved by capital has to stay in that relationship for our life to continue stably as it is. Look around the world. Do you think that's what's happening? Do you think that's what's going to happen? No. We are going to be cut off. And we don't have the ability right now to be resilient to even the smallest shocks, to the production lines that have been spread around the world that bring the goods to our country. It's not a surprise to us, now to see, when you understand how parasitic the economy is, then you realize why it is that there are far more people engaged in logistics in our country, in delivering and distributing goods, than there are in making things. The things are all made abroad and brought in, and they're just in time. They're not even warehoused in this country. Literally, you have a strike or a disruption almost anywhere in the world, and there's a repercussion in terms of what's available to you in the supermarket. So it's extremely parasitic and extremely vulnerable, in fact, to shocks, to rebellions around the world. And this is really important to understand, that the system that looks so strong has hollowed itself out, eaten itself out from the inside, and now is like a house of cards. It's a fortress that's built on shifting sands. Imperialism right now is in crisis. It's in the deepest economic crisis it's ever been in. The only thing we have any kind of parallel to make really is the period of the 1930s, what was called then the Great Depression, and we have to now call this one the Greatest Depression. And this is a terminal decline for imperialism. There is no power in the world, no imperialist country that is able to resuscitate itself to the extent of breathing new life into this system. The USA was the country that managed to benefit and profit from World War I and World War II. At that time, its industry was still growing and expanding. The USA now is like Europe was at the time of World War I. It also has hollowed out its economy. It also is decaying, bankrupt, rotten from the inside out, unable even to plan production for the wars it's trying to wage, because of the contradictions of the profit system and the advanced decay of the capitalist system. What's the response of the financiers to their crisis? It's austerity, as Joseph pointed out, destruction. We saw this also in the 1930s, that, this is what fascism feeds on, is the need to combine austerity, destruction of productive forces, destruction even of people, destruction of accumulated wealth, with war. War to try to reinvigorate markets, war to capture territories, sources of material, and to destroy opponents of whatever type. This is the response of the imperialists to their crisis. It's the only response they can have, other than putting their hands up and saying, okay, we accept. Our day is done. Our system can't resolve its own crisis. We're ready to resign. You come and take over, you proles. Well, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it without being pushed. And so the logic of their system impels them to austerity and to war. And because both of those things are unpopular, we must also have scapegoating and racism to divide the people against one another and to mobilize them for at least to be sympathetic and preferably to be active in the war drive. And alongside all of that, repression of the people who stand against what is happening and try to organize the working class. The drive to war is a sign not of the strength of imperialism, but of its systemic weakness. And the question really is, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to mobilize the people? How do we take advantage of the weakness of the system to help it to crumble and fall? First of all, of course, is the need to oppose the war drive, expose the reasons for the war, and help the workers of Britain understand that they have a side, and it's not the side of their ruling class. You know, our party was foundational member of the World Anti-Imperialist Platform that was formed 2 years ago. And the reason we realized it was time to form such an organization internationally to strengthen the efforts of our movement in this direction was because the launch of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine drew a line around the world. Very clearly showed there's two sides in this battle that's coming. It's a titanic battle for the future of humanity. And you have to be on a side. There's no neither Washington nor Moscow. Trotsky are standing in the middle. You're on one side or you're on the other. You're for humanity or you're for imperialism. This is the choice. And what we discovered at the beginning of this war, was that in the heart of the communist movement, there is utter confusion internationally. Huge number of parties have bought into a nonsensical line that says Russia is imperialist, China is imperialist, all the wars that are coming are inter-imperialist and the workers have no side. This is utterly, scientifically has no basis, and in terms of the struggle, it's a poison that demobilizes the very people who should be at the heart of the struggle. We, the communists, are the ones who have always given the steel to national liberation and anti-imperialist movements precisely because we have a scientific understanding of what is imperialism. Without our input, our steel, our knowledge, the anti-imperialist movement, no matter how vigorous, how emotional, how enthusiastic, is weak. The communist movement must be at the heart. Marxist-Leninist theory must be the guiding force. If we are to be successful, there is a huge opportunity in front of us. But we need to maximize our chances of success, and that means the communists need to be at the heart of this movement, not standing on the edge, wondering which way to go. So we wrote the Paris Declaration of the platform, and we launched it 2 years ago, this last month gone. And in it we pointed out that the workers, oppressed peoples, anti-imperialist communists of the world must support Russia, must promote a Russian victory, must support China if and when China is attacked and promote a Chinese victory. The same for Iran, the same for the DPRK. We understand all these countries are objectively standing in the way of imperialist control of the world. That is why they are targeted. They are the bedrock of the world axis of resistance. They are providing the military, economic, and political resilience to that axis. They're providing confidence to peoples all over the world that they too can rise up. I do not think it's any kind of an accident that the Palestinian resistance launched their Al-Aqsa flood operation in the wake of victory after victory of the special military operation in Ukraine, which is defeating all the power of NATO economically and militarily. You only have to go around the world and meet revolutionaries who've lived through very hard times, believe me, to see how these shifts in the balance of forces in the world are changing the consciousness and the confidence levels of workers and oppressed peoples everywhere. I was just in Senegal with my comrade Ellie for an African conference of the World Anti-Imperialist Platform. And we met comrades who've been through some really hard times. You want to see defeats in struggle. You go and talk to some African revolutionaries. We met comrades from Niger, Burkina Faso, Senegal, from Congo, who retain their confidence. And Kenya, of course. And Kenya. And despite all the reverses they've suffered, they retain their confidence and their optimism. They keep working. Not only do they keep working, they feel the balance of forces shifting. They feel the ground on which they are operating becoming firmer. They see a window of opportunity opening up in front of them in Africa precisely because the imperialists are bogged down in Ukraine, bogged down in the Middle East, winning in neither place, but expending huge amounts of financial and military material and manpower. You know, look at Ukraine. The imperialists spent 30 years creating a proxy force to throw at Russia. It's a horrendous tragedy for Ukraine. That proxy force is being destroyed completely. There is no ability for the imperialists to keep building such big armies and lose them at such a rate. The amount of time it takes to build the army versus the amount of time it takes such forces as Russia to destroy them. The maths doesn't add up. Just like the maths of artillery shells don't add up, as our comrade was saying earlier. So there's a huge opportunity for the axis of resistance, but it's still not a foregone conclusion when you consider the huge economic power that still rests with the imperialists, their ability to spread lies, their ability to demoralize people, to demotivate them, to point them against one another. The thing the British in particular, but the imperialists have all learned from one another, with the British as the particular specialists, is divide and rule. How to turn workers against one another. All the false versions of nationalism, anti-imperialism, Marxism, Leninism that circulate in our midst, the way the information space is absolutely flooded with lies and false versions of Marxist politics, in order that as soon as somebody starts looking for Marxism, they'll find a false trail to follow. It becomes very, very hard to make out who are the purveyors of truth if you're just innocently looking and trying to work it out. You know, this is something the imperialists are exceptionally good at, and one of the jobs of the platform is to help to boost the voices of the genuinely revolutionary currents, which in many countries, although they are significant because of their politics, their size is small and their ability to cut through the disinformation is limited. So the platform has a role in boosting the voices and the forces of all of those genuinely anti-imperialist and revolutionary forces around the world. Our job here is to oppose the war drive and fight for the victory of the resistance. It is to bring an understanding to the masses that their side is the anti-imperialist side, that weakening their enemy is what they need to see happen in order to further their own cause, and to actively come to work with that understanding, to work to disrupt and sabotage the war effort at home on the home front. In every single country where NATO operates, which is a huge number of the countries in the world, the working class needs to be given this message and mobilized. Pressure needs to be put through the trade unions from the ground upwards, because we know the leaders of our trade unions have been totally bought up. But from the ground upwards, the pressure needs to come through the ordinary members. This understanding, just as the communists led the hands-off Russia movement in 1920, successfully through the grassroots of the trade union movement, to the point where the trade union leaders, who were in no way sympathetic, were forced to threaten the ruling class with a general strike if they didn't back out of the war of intervention against young Soviet Russia. That's exactly the movement we need to spark in Britain today. We need a mass movement of non-cooperation, an anti-war movement that acts in solidarity and doesn't just pass resolutions. And of course, fundamentally, we need to work on reconnecting Marxism with the masses. That means we have to take seriously the job of mastering Marxism, every one of us, in order to build a party that's really mastered Marxism, and to build a physical network. You know, I was talking to my nephew earlier today about the power of the internet and how everybody uses the internet. You have to be online to get anywhere today. Well, we do our best in the small way that's open to us to use the internet, and we will continue to do so while it's possible. But we must never forget that the odds of getting anywhere on the internet are stacked massively against us because it's a tool in the hands of our enemy. And more than that, as soon as we start to have success, our enemy can switch off our internet like that. So if we just tell ourselves, oh, modern technology and the internet's going to fix our problems, we are deluding ourselves. We must, while using the internet and every means at our disposal, we must understand that no revolution will ever succeed without building a physical network of people with physical literature in their hands connected to the masses all over the country, which the ruling class cannot switch off. And as we are fighting to master Marxism and bring its scientific insights to the masses as the guiding force for mapping out our strategy, our tactics, our program, our understanding of our mission, we must recognize that alongside that is the fight against opportunism and wrong ideas in our movement. We need especially to popularize the understanding amongst the masses that every single tie that binds our movement in any way to the Labour Party must be broken. And that, of course, means fighting and opposing every single force to the left of Labour, so-called left, which calls itself socialist, calls itself communist, but ultimately works to tie the workers back to the Labour Party in some way or another. They are doing the job of imperialism. They are not helping us get towards socialism. We really must embody the lessons, the spirit, and the message of October, which, as Lenin taught us, and Marx and Engels before them, that the working class is the ruling class in waiting. They just need to be made aware of that and equipped to fulfill that historic mission. But that is their mission. It's not our job to make the revolution and build socialism. It's the working class that will do that, but it will do that only when it has grasped that is its mission, and how it's going to do that through a vanguard organization and through scientific socialism as its guiding theory. You know, October taught us something that can never be taken away from us. We can win. We will win. Another world is not only necessary, it is possible. I ask all our comrades, look around on the platform tonight, look around the world, and realize we are not alone. What we need to do is come together. So please join us and help us build the axis of resistance in Britain.